IA 13. Inteligencia artificial al alcance de todos.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you very much for having me today. So my name is Kfir Kimhi. I'm going to discuss today about the change that we lately see because of COVID-19 and the recent change of how can we protect our data and what changed in the insider threat because of COVID-19 or really pushed after the COVID-19. So just a few words about myself. So again, my name is Kfir Kimhi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of It's Mine. We created a product that's called Beyond DLP 4 years ago. And today we are basically having our software available from Australia to Europe, to Israel, to the US and also South America. And before It's Mine, I used to work as a security architect at Checkpoint for 11 years. Had the experience to be with very large organizations, trying to help them to work in a more secured way. And back in that time, we already started to see that something is about to change when we are talking about data protection. So we all see the change in the regulations perspective and that privacy is becoming something that is extremely important to companies. But more than that, we have today companies that create nothing but data. So data is almost the new currency in the world. And as we see that in the last couple of years, starting from GDPR and many other regulatory requirements that came afterward, the regulation tells us something very clear. Data does not belong to the company. It belongs to the individual. And I'm, as an individual, when I'm going to a website and I'm giving them my information, I'm expecting them to save it as my bank is saving my money. And the regulation is saying exactly like that. And the regulation is not for it's not for a large size organization or only for banks, it's for everyone. So one thing that have changed is a reason for us to protect our data, or the regulation push us to protect our data in a better way, but the environment become extremely hard. So when we are looking today and where is our data, we see that our data is scattered everywhere. It's in the cloud, it's in the on-prem file storages, it's inside of the employees' devices, on the BYOD, on their personal devices. And we have the change that has been done in the organization where today employees working from home. We saw that already a couple of years ago, that we had more subcontractors and a third party connecting to our network, but employees working from home, 100% of employees working from home, that we haven't had in the past. That pushed the industry to move more to the cloud. More data is sitting in our Microsoft 365, more data is sitting in Google Suite and Dropbox, and it's becoming part of the tools that companies have to use. But that's not the only thing that changed. So employees sitting at home, working with his home computer, basically with his own computer and connected using a router that he haven't changed the password at all. More than that, on that device, he needs his kids to study. The kids need to play. So all kind of accesses that we are not seeing on a regular basis on the inside of our environment now needs to be taken care of. But that's not only it. We already started to see in the US that the depression goes up, tripled itself. So companies employees, because of the situation, started to be unclear. Are they going to keep being in the organization? With all the kids and the pushing of the managers to do the same work that they used to do in the office, but now the kids, they need to entertain them. Now the depression becoming higher, the unclear of what's going to happen. When employees leaving the company, they are taking data with them. 87% of the employees, even before the COVID-19, took data with them before they leave the company. Now, if we have more retention rate, and we expect to see, unfortunately, more employees leaving the company, and 87% of them will take sensitive data from the company, we are talking about #1 risk in the organization. So now there are no boundaries, and the risk is basically from our employees. We need to take a different approach. We're talking about the insider threat. We have to understand what it is built from. It's built from external attacker that took advantage of one of our employees' devices or the employee's router at home, or even a server that we have that we cannot install the traditional antivirus solution. When that device is being infected and trying to harm our company data, trying to change it, to delete it, to encrypt it, or to steal it, we need to block it as soon as possible. The other vectors of attack that we need to handle when we are talking about the insider threat, it's of course the employees. Now, employees, most of the time, they are not a vector of attack. They are doing their work. They need to use the data. We need to show them what we expect them to do with the company data. But more than that, we need to help them to avoid doing mistakes. When employees are about to leave the company, we want them to remember that we are watching. We need them to think twice before they take sensitive data with them. And if they decided that they will take data with them, we need to have the capability to have hard evidence against them without harming the entire employee's privacy. But for those users that we now have a risk on them, we need to be capable to see exactly what they did. And I don't mean logs. We need to see exactly what this user is trying to do. When we are dealing with the threat that's coming from the inside, we need different sets of tools. We need to have a completely different approach. And only by using this different approach, we will be able to be successful. If we have a terror attack that we have in a city, we cannot use a tank in order to mitigate that terror attack. We need to use the most technical, most powerful units that we have that could do something that is very, very limited without harming additional civilians. When we need our people to help them to protect against the coronavirus, we need them to educate them. We need to explain them why do they need to wear the mask. Without explaining them, we will not be able to get those people to put their mask on their faces. We will not be able, just because we are giving them fines, to make them put the mask on. But if we will not have the capability to give those fines, to know about it, and to be able to punish, we will never be able to create the needed awareness from the users. So the whole approach, when we're talking about employees, have to take a different approach. Today, there are several solutions that are already doing it in a very effective way. One of them is anti-phishing solutions. In the anti-phishing solution, what companies are doing today is creating fake emails and giving those fake emails to the users. And when the users use these fake emails, they are capable to retrain them, to remind them why it is so important to be careful with the emails that they open, and to remind them what is it expected for them to be done. They know that the company has the capability to watch. So that done with the phishing, it should be done as well with the company data. Our approach, or the way that we think that could be very effective to mitigate the data risk, is first of all to be able to track it everywhere. Centralizing the company data to the central file storage that we already have. Because we paid for the Microsoft 365, we have the OneDrive, we have the SharePoint Online, we have the Teams and the capability to share information via the Teams. We have the Google Drive, we have the Dropbox, we have the on-prem file storages. This is supposed to be the right place to put the sensitive data. But in order to put the sensitive data in, we need to make sure that it's secured. We need to make sure that we close the doors to places that users do not need anymore on a regular basis. We need to engage our users to do this, to make sure that users only access to data that they need. And if they don't need access to a place anymore, we have the capability to close it very easily without thousands of people just keeping our security. The other thing that we need to do is not just to monitor and to be able to track our data in the file storages, we need to track our most sensitive data everywhere because there are no boundaries anymore. We need to limit the time that data sits outside of the company. We can do it with multiple ways and multiple technologies to make sure that the data call home whenever it's being used. And when it's calling home, we have that kind of understanding of where is most interesting company data is being used. And we also need the capability to make sure that it doesn't live outside for too long without harming the productivity of the users. We need to do it in a very simple way that when data is leaving the company, it's leaving it for a limited amount of time. Inside of its mind, our most sensitive data, our Excel files, with all the customers' information, can live on employees' devices for just one day. The users have to centralize the data, and every time that they will use it, they will have one day to do all the changes that they want, all the reports that they need to create. But every data that they will create will have to be centralized back into the central file storages. The second capability is that we think that it's extremely easy and extremely important to add is a capability to find external attackers, to find rogue employees, to look for the user's bad behavior. And in order to do that, we think that the concept of the anti-phishing, creating fake emails and sharing it with the users, can be also implemented in the company's OneDrive. What we need is to create automatically files, fake files, that will belong to the security team. It's very easy to track these files and make sure that when this data is being used outside of the company, it's giving us a great lead to understand what's going on. If this data is being encrypted, we need to be able to block it immediately because no one should encrypt this data. So that could be a great red flag to understand that we might have a potential data breach or data loss that's coming from ransomware. So first of all, to track the data using the file GPS or similar technologies, the data that sits basically everywhere, to know where our quarter results before it's being released, where it is being used. Our most sensitive customers' information, we need to make sure that it's being tracked every time that it's being used. And again, with these capabilities of the fake files, for example, it can help us to understand and mitigate the needed risk. making sure that we have backup to the file storages is much easier than to back up every endpoint that we have in the company. Making sure that when those fake data are being encrypted, we can immediately block, because we know that no one should encrypt this data. We should be able to look at the insiders, to help our employees to avoid doing mistakes, to train them again in case they use this fake data. That could give us a great opportunity to remind the users what is it that we expect them to do and what we expect them not to do. We need to tell them every time that they are not using access to important areas, that if they haven't accessed it to the last 30 days, last 60 days, to ask the user, do you really need this access? One of the things that work extremely well in anti-phishing solution is to give the users scores, to give them grades when they're doing good. The same can be done on the file storages. If the users proactively telling you that they do not need access to places that they don't use anymore, mark them, give them prizes, give them a good score. Engaging the employees to protect the company data is extremely powerful. And when employees decided before they're leaving the company to take company data, we need to have hard evidence against them. The softerminds, those fake files that can be created, is one of the examples of a good way to know that something bad may be happening, and that would lead either to run another scan using the EDR solution, and to make sure that there is no malicious activity, but it also can be the good time to make sure what exactly that user is doing on his endpoint. Yes, to penetrate a little bit to his privacy, but to make sure that we can keep it as much as we can. What we think that the right way to do to getting the data of what the user is exactly doing on his endpoint, we believe that it only should be done when the users click on those files. It should be done when the risk level becoming higher if the employees did something bad. So running some test on that user, understanding if it did something else that look malicious, if it changed data and sent it outside. And if those users are, if that user is also trying to be malicious. Of course, we need to verify that he's sitting next to the computer as well. The last part is also to make sure that we have the capability to share this information only after we get an approval. Definitely for VPs or for C-level people, the security department should not be able to see this kind of information unless they got the approval from high management. So in the end of it, when we are talking about data security and on insider threat specifically, we always need to be reminded that in order to really protect the company data, it has to be protection against structured and unstructured data. So files and applications. And not more, and more than that, it needs to be data at rest, in motion, and in use. If we don't cover data at rest, in motion, and in use, we will always, it will be very easy to bypass the solution. That's why being on the endpoint is extremely important, but we believe that it should be done for a limited amount of time. In our case, we believe that being on the endpoint, only when there is risk, and only when we see something bad happening, not only help us from unnecessary upgrade and update, but it's also giving us the capability to do much more from the visibility perspective and to be able to know more about our company data. So again, when we are looking at the threats that coming from the inside, we need to be able to look what the users are doing, we need to have to understand that external attacker taking advantage of one of our employees' devices, they look like employees. We need different set of tools to handle them. We have to engage our employees. We have to make sure that our employees are with us, they know what they're doing, and they know that we are watching. And that could be done in many different ways. We do it today on the physical world, inside of our office, putting security cameras and giving signs of the security cameras. And that should be done as well in our environment, in our data, sharing the information with the users, train them, explain them what we are doing is extremely powerful. It will engage them, and it will make sure that they deal with the company property in the right way. So that's about it. We are here also if you want to ask questions. Would love to answer.
IA 13.